Hey guys, welcome back to the Max Spence Business Podcast. Before I get into today's guest, if you can please like, subscribe, leave a review. It helps out a ton with the podcast and also the people that are coming on the show. So without further ado, today's guest is Jesse Gittler. So Jesse is the Principal Sales Development Manager at Patient Pop. He's also a contributor on LinkedIn for sales and sales management. So guys, if you're on LinkedIn, I highly recommend that you go check out his profile. He's got some great content. You post like once or twice a day, like really interesting stuff about sales. So if you're an SDR or just getting into the sales space, I highly recommend that you check this guy out. But yeah, it's great to have you on the show, Jesse.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. So for people that maybe haven't come across your, LinkedIn posts or any of your content, why don't we just start with some basics? Like, where did you grow up? Where did you go to school? And what was your first passion?
Yeah, for sure. I grew up in New York. If you can't tell by the accent in a couple of minutes in here, I've been told I have a New York accent, a very heavy one, but you never know when you're the one speaking. I grew up in New York, went to school in upstate New York, Albany for finance management. Had no idea what I wanted to do in my life. Wanted to be a businessman, make money, graduated. It was a bit of a recession. Tried to do my own thing for a while. Me and two of my friends had a small business we ran. And then it got to a point where I was like, I need healthcare. Like I need a real job that's going to pay me consistently and all that, some structure. And I found a company called Varonis, which is a great company in New York. I was an SDR there. We actually were pre-IPO and we actually went public while I was there. It was a cool experience. But I went in there not knowing anything. And this was before SDRs. Obviously, this was 2013 probably. So it was before SDRs were a thing, where sales orgs were a known thing where people would try to get into and go. I went in there and the hiring manager gave me a chance, really. I had no idea what I was doing or talking about. And, I put my head down and really just made it work. I figured out how to get the results and I continuously got them. And it's all about consistency. And my first passion,
let's say when you were in high school or something, did you have any hobbies or anything that you maybe you wanted to be a musician or something like that? Or did you have anything like that? Or was it always I want to be into the business space and that's always sort of saw yourself going? Or maybe, there's some people that, you sort of found your passion into your mid 20s, right? Or 30s. That happens with a lot of people too.
Yeah, growing up, I played sports. I loved playing basketball. I was a skateboarder earlier than that. And, I always wanted to do something like that, right? And then you get a little bit older and you realize, all right, you got to get a little bit more realistic. I've always had a passion for helping people. It's always just been easy for me, quite frankly. And I really get a great joy from it. The stars kind of aligned and I kind of led me into this management role because when I first went to as an SDR, everyone told me, you do an SDR and then you get promoted to a closing role. And that's what I told my manager. I want to close, which was true at the time, but I had no idea what anything was. And then a crucial component for me and anyone who's listening to this who wants to get into management, and I did this without anyone telling me. So if you're intentional with it, you have more of a chance, but I just looked around and I saw new hires. And I was just a new hire and I was a new hire in a new building in the middle of Manhattan. And I remember walking into a room the first day and seeing 30 people and they were talking and they were so calm and cool. And I was like, this is I was giving me anxiety. So then I saw the next new hire come in 2 months later. I'm like, that kid's feeling what I felt. And I just was attracted to that and I helped them. And my manager saw that. And my manager was the one who came up to me and said, hey, you could get a closing role, but there's also this management thing we think you'd be good at. And I really just went back, thought about it and, took that role and kind of just set off from there.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So more of a teaching role and helping others like you're saying. Okay, awesome. And when you first got into sales, what was when you first started that company, was your goal to be in sales or was it just to sort of try and get any job in that company that could be around sales or anything like that? Or did you have any direct, or was it
zero direction? Yeah, zero
okay.
direction. I told you, I literally they could have been doing anything. I wanted a job and I was going to work my ass off to make it happen, whatever it was.
Yeah.
So, but then I realized early on, oh shit, I'm actually good at this. I'm
Hmm.
good at this. And then like, I'm good at the sales thing. And then
Hmm.
the helping people thing was like, oh my God. Like, and to this day, sometimes I wake up and I'm just like, I don't need to search for meaning in my job. And it's just, there's not a dollar value that you can have on that.
Hmm.
Like I,
Yeah.
I truly care about what I do and I really, really like it and love it. And, um, the money that I'm able to make and the career that I'm able to have is really just a bonus on it. Yeah.
Yeah, like to be honest, like I think that's what everybody's going for, is exactly what you explained, was like having that passion for what they do daily, like, or what the work that they do, and valuing what they provide to society or provide to their team over like the dollar figure. Because like that's something that I feel like a lot of people get burnt out in. Or I think COVID actually exposed a lot of that, was like people that were
Yeah.
maybe in jobs that were had high dollar value, or something like that, but they didn't really like it. And then COVID came around, and because that, like, you probably saw that, like, there was a huge switch up with people, like, people leaving jobs, or people switching positions, or there's huge amount of like transitioning that happened right when COVID happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, COVID kind of like, put a fast forward button on a lot of things in people's lives. You know what I mean? Like it made a lot of the reality kind of stand out a little bit more because you had to sit in between the walls of it all. And, I think that's a huge problem in today's world, is that, first of all, people think money's going to make them happy. It absolutely does not. And then people, like, specifically in sales, and sales, it's good. You want to be money motivated, but like anyone who tells me that they're in sales just for money, that to me, that's a yellow flag. Like I'm going to flag that as like, all right, well, you know, that's, that doesn't pan out. It doesn't last long. And there are people that are like that. I know some people that are like that really just do it for the money, and they don't care about much else, and that's cool too. But overall, it's such a it's such a difficult time in the world, and so many people wake up and have to go do a job where and it's not that there's no meaning to their job, it's just they can't see the meaning, because there's meaning to every job. Everyone who's doing something, working somewhere, I would challenge them, and I would be open to having a conversation with them about finding their meaning behind it, because there are ways to do that.
Yeah, no, 100%. So going to now, when you were in sales and figuring all that out, uh, what type of sales were you doing? Were you doing like cold calls? Was it emailing? Like, what did you get really good at? That sort of helped you grow your sort of like sort of skills for sales, right? Like, what were your repetitions that you did?
Yeah, well, when I started off as an SDR, I remember I had like, I'm not trying to be arrogant or anything, I'm just telling the truth. I had like, my first 3 days were bad, and that was it, to be honest. And I remember early on, like, first of all, going and starting a job like that where you got to look at the computer all day and make calls all day. I remember that first day, it was like 1:15, and I remember getting up and going to look outside the window in the kitchen, and we were in a big high-rise building in Manhattan, and like I was like, my eyes were blurry, and I'm like, I got to do this again tomorrow. Like, wow, I feel like my job's done here. You know what I mean? And it was like this is going to be hard. And then the next day, all right, still the same thing. The next day, didn't book a meeting yet. I remember walking home, look at like it was yesterday. It was snowing, and I was working. I lived in Long Island, so I had to take the train from, back and forth. And so I was going dark to dark, where like, I'd wake up, it'd be completely dark, and I get home, it'd be completely dark. And I remember walking, it was like snow on the ground. I was texting one of my friends, and I just remember saying, like, I don't know if I could do this. Like, I remember that pinnacle moment. Like, I don't know if I could do this. Like, I got to book 2 meetings a day. I haven't booked one, and I'm so burnt out after 3 days. And that very next day, I got in a little bit earlier, got that first meeting, and then it was just like, it just started to flow. And it was really about the repetition, but it was, I was obsessed with it. No one was making more dials than me. Nobody was, working harder than me or longer than me. And, that's always not a good thing. But early on in the job, I think it's important that you become somewhat obsessed with it for a certain point.
Yeah, 100%. And to sort of speak on that and give a little bit of advice to people that are maybe just starting out, and maybe they're listening to this podcast and it's sort of their second day at their sales job, and they're thinking the exact same thing. They're like, holy crap, like, I'm going through the exact same thing. What sort of clicked in your third day that you got that meeting, and then after that, like scheduling more meetings?
I'll tell you, it was pretty eye-opening because I remember, and I've talked about this on a couple other podcasts too, but I remember like being really scared for people to hear me pitch. Like I would come in earlier than everyone else so that I could make my calls and other people around me couldn't hear me, where I'd be like, yeah, hey, so I'm calling and just looking around, right? And then I see like Jim in the corner and he's doing the same thing, really scared, really, doesn't want people to hear, because you don't want to like, it's embarrassing. It's hard. Anyone who's made cold calls, like the people that are listening only hear one side of it. So even now to this day, when I jump on calls as a manager, we're in the office and we call doctors, and I got a doctor and everybody's listening. And I'm like, all right, Mr. Doctor, like, can we set you up with here and that? And they hang up. They don't hear that. Everyone's like, what are they saying? And then I'm like, oh, they hung up. And even to this day, and where I am and what I've been through, I still feel that in my stomach. And like, it's not easy to get through. So, but back to day 3, I saw everybody doing it. And I just made a decision in that moment, like, this is ridiculous. Like, and I kind of just stood up and stood out, and it's just made my calls mad loud, and like, put myself out there to get exposed quicker, so that like I could go through that pain and that hesitation faster, so that I'm going to win faster, because we're all going to fail. It's just about how fast we kind of get there and overcome that, and then it started to click. And I was very, very, I followed up incredibly well. I didn't let people off the hook. And I made sure that I got something from every call. If I was going to give something, I was going to get something in return.
And could you like because I think that was like a really good part you mentioned there was starting to get like a little bit more like aggressive, but like not like aggressive, but like confident, right? In like, I'm gonna do these calls, and I don't really care if like I mess up or whatever. I'm going to learn from them, and I'm just going to keep moving forward. So talking about that, could you elaborate on that? Like, what were you like? Were you setting yourself goals for like the day or stuff, or like how did you sort of mentally, because like somebody might be listening, they might be like, well, oh man, this is like, I want to do better in sales, but it's so tough, and I'm nervous to do my pitch and stuff and all that. So do you have any other advice that you have for that person at all, or?
Yeah, for sure. And like, how I did well at the job and how I got my results, I wouldn't necessarily coach that. There are two different things now. I don't coach exactly what I did. I didn't have,
Oh, okay.
I didn't have a big process and goal setting. Like, this was early days of like, I didn't have guidance. It was like, go figure this out. So I was just drilling the calls, and I just figured this is a numbers game. I'm going to make as many calls as I possibly can, and I'm going to feel out where I'm struggling. But nowadays, I tell my new hires when I get them, like, keep an open pad of paper. And, anytime you feel insecure on a phone call, write it down. I don't care if it's like doctor coughed in the background, like as minuscule as it gets, like, let's address that. Let's address those things early on, so that when you get to them the next time, you are stronger. You are a better version of yourself, because most of the time, we're on the phones and we feel that, or we see an objection we can't handle, or we get into a situation we don't know how to get out of, we go the other way. We go out, I'm going to put that to the side. And then 3 days later, happens again. So there's no real growth. Early on in the role, the outcomes of the calls don't matter. And that's the biggest problem with SDRs, is that we all want a quick hit, dopamine fix, meeting, boom. Like, this is a long game. Sales is a long game. There's a reason why it takes 9-10 touches to book a meeting. So it's like leaving each call better than you found it, and not identifying your whole existence with the results of your calls. Because if we did that, we would be so, oh, meeting, no meeting, oh, this didn't show up. Oh, it's a very swingy game. So you really got to stay like, I'm going to focus on my behaviors. I got these calls I got to make. I got these emails I'm going to make. I'm going to make them to the best of my ability, and I'm going to learn from them. And that's the only thing that matters. And if you do that, you're going to win no matter what.
Yeah. I really love that. Cause like actually in my business right now, like I recently just started like an editing business, helping production companies and creators produce content. And right now I'm doing like a lot of outbound like cold calls, right? And it's the first time I've never had to do it before, like in any other business, right? So doing these cold calls, it's like when I first started, I was like, oh my God, this is awful. It's
terrible.
yeah, it's just like you're so nervous, you're so like scared for like, you're like, it sounds weird. And everything you mentioned there, it's actually really funny because I think like it's actually crazy because everything you mentioned talking about your first experience and everybody else, I think everybody has the exact same experience in like when they start as like I remember when I was first pitching, I didn't want to pitch around anybody, right? Like I wanted to like just go down into like a little area and just where it was like dark and I could just, that's where I could do my calls and stuff. And then I remember when like the first person hung up on me, right? I was like, oh, that hurts.
Yeah.
But then then like you said, it's the behaviors and it's just like, you have these calls you need to make, it's the emails you need to make, and just focusing on that, right? And like the only way to get better at something, I truly believe, is like exactly like the gym. It's like the only way to get better is to just put in the repetition, right? Like that's it's like you can't really like anybody who got good at what they did, they just put in the reps. So I mean, if you put in the reps, you're going to be able to get there too.
It's literally the most underrated thing in the existence of mankind. Almost, that's ridiculous to say, but you know what I'm saying. Like, it's really like, you want to get good at taking a lefty layup in basketball, you take 1,000 lefty layups. Like, you have to practice. And so many times in sales, and I just went over this with my team, and we rolled out something that I hope truly helps. But even after the weekend, like you have a long weekend, you come back, you're going to be rusty. Like, you need to practice these things. And also, people think you're like born with these sales skills, or like, we learn how to talk so we know how to sell. It's not true. And the same thing is for email too, which is a huge opportunity now that we're seeing, and I'm seeing, is that nobody really knows how to write emails, sales emails specifically. And we think that because we know how to write, that we know how to write sales emails, but that's not actually the case. And just like anything else, it's a skill you learn and you need to practice it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. Actually, like one thing you mentioned there about the sales emails, I'm actually excited to jump into that a little bit later into the podcast. But yeah, going into then, as your career started to transition into the sales management role, how did you find that? And like, was that like another scary moment that you had to, figure things out, or were you a little bit more prepared for it, or like how did that sort of transition go?
I'm trying to, that was probably one of the most scary moments I've ever had. Besides, there was a moment in probably the most fearful moment I've had in my, well, no, that's going a little deep, but we can come back to that. But as a manager, when I just got promoted, you gotta understand that there were people that were here longer than me, that wanted to be a manager. And all of a sudden, Jesse, like, you're their boss. And I had to have that roundtable discussion, that meeting, or whatever that is. And I remember like that first day before I had to do it, I was really like uptight, like, not that I didn't think I deserved it, but like, all right, I have someone who was been here. Results are pretty good, not as good as mine, but like, been here longer than me at this company, want this role. And now all of a sudden I'm going to ask them for where your dial's at. You know what I mean? And, I really just looked at them and said, hey guys, like, I'm in this position. I am no better than you as a human being. We're equals. I have a position where I have an opportunity to help you, and you have an opportunity to help me help you. And we both want the same thing, right? You want to get promoted. You want to make money. I want to get you there. So if we work together, we have the best chance of doing that, and if I fuck up or I mess up, like, call me out on it. I want to learn. And like, when you take that approach of like, you just want to grow, and that's your North Star, it takes away all the personal feelings that can happen, because in every single situation that happens, it's just a learning experience. And that's kind of how I laid it out, but it was not easy.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. No, that is like actually something like another great piece of advice right there, right? Because I like, it's funny because it's like it's something that probably a lot of people go through, right? Like if when they get promoted to that sales management job, is like going from the sale, going from like the sales guy or sales girl, and you're sort of part of the team, to then being in that management position, right? Which is like, you're like trying to be the same, but it's a little bit different, right? Because now you're trying to like, focus on getting the sales and all that type of stuff and keeping track of things. So
It's 100% different, and one of the other, there's major hurdles. And that's why I offer my hand to people that are just getting into management from an IC role, like an individual contributor role, because, and especially people in my company, like I'll reach out to every single person that just gets promoted, because you're on an island, like literally. You go from literally being in complete control of your life. If I'm behind in the month as an AE or an SDR, I'm going to go make more dials and make more emails. Leave me alone. I got all day and night, and I'm going to do whatever I got to do. As a manager, you don't get that luxury. You have to pull pieces in different ways. And if you try what you've done, or you try to instill on your reps the way that you did it, you'll fail very fast, because everybody's different, and you need to adapt to everyone's kind of style of coaching.
Yeah, 100%. It's pretty much like going from like a sports player to the coaching role, right? Of the team.
Same thing, yeah.
And that's another thing that you mentioned that was really good, was talking about addressing everybody different. Like that's like I was previously in the Army for a bit.
Oh, cool.
And
Thank you for your service.
Oh well, yeah, I didn't do any like tours or anything like that. So I mean, like
Doesn't matter.
nothing, but
thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, so pretty much the corporals that I saw did really, really, really well. They like, and I sort of compared them to like the other corporals that, sort of didn't have as like they would do well, but they didn't have as like good performing teams. And the corporals that I really liked were the ones that they could like, they tailored their like training to the individual person, and they were really, really good at it. And they're really good at like sensing like that person's behavior and like what they respond to best. Because some people like, knowing when they need a little kick in the butt, and then knowing when you need to pull back, right? And then there'd be other corporals that would have like a steamroll mentality of things. And I mean, like it would just be like an unrelenting, like, meet these expectations, or you're gonna have like repercussions for it, right? And sometimes that worked. Sometimes the teams would perform like that and they would do well, but other times, you'd see some teams that wouldn't perform that well because of it, because like some guys just wouldn't be able to deal with it, and they didn't like it, and it bred a lot of resentment between the trainee and the corporal and stuff. But yeah, like that's one thing that you mentioned that I really liked, was tailoring your coaching to the individual person, which I think is like, it's a skill in itself. And once you figure that out, I think, like that escalates your coaching and, management capability to like the next level. And could you actually talk about that? Like how did you sort of figure that out?
Sure. You just get to know the person as a person, like you just, what really drives them? Why are they really here? Because they're not here for money. What does actually money give you? Money gives you time. Okay, well, what do you want time for? Like you got to go a little bit more underneath the surface to find out what's really going on. And when you could connect to someone on a human level, and this is how I manage now, it's how I've always managed, is I really try to make better people. I make better people, and then I default, I get better salespeople. Mm-hmm. Magic, right? Not really. This is because we're just a human being talking to other human beings. That's what sales is. And if you're a better version of yourself, you're going to do that better. So it's really asking them questions about them and truly listening, truly listening, understanding what they want to do, why they're here, how to get them there. And then, I'm also just, one of my talents, in my opinion, is being able to read people. Like I just have a very good knack for that. So I'm able to see when to push, when to pull, when to, put someone in a position to do more or do less, or sometimes just do nothing. Like that is very powerful too. Like get off and you're done for the day. You know what I mean? Let's go talk. All those things are so important, and each individual is completely different.
Yeah, 100%. And so sort of looking at that now, like let's say when you have like, you bring on a new SDR, right? What do you sort of tell them to focus their time and energy on when you first, and I know that can be very broad because, right, like everybody who joins might have a different skill level, has different strengths and weaknesses. So you're going to tailor what they should work on. But let's say just averaging now, like what's some advice that you have for an SDR that comes on? What should they be focusing their energy on at the beginning to develop skills
Yeah.
or like anything like that?
And I treat all my new people exactly the same, right? I don't know them. They don't know me. So that's the first order of business. Let's get to know each other. I send everyone a 20-question document that they fill out that's mostly personal stuff. And that's our first one-on-one where we talk about those things. And then from there, it's put in the behaviors, because I won't even coach you if you don't. If you don't hit the certain activities, calls and emails, like that's completely in your control. I'm not going to put my time if you're not going to meet me there in the middle, right? Because I don't understand where we need to get better. It's like trying to play a sport out of shape. Like you don't know if you're good or not. You're just not put in position to see that. And it's the same thing there. So for me and new people and new reps, it's all right, let's give them the skills that they need, right? The basics. Now go out there and do it. Let's follow up and coach on where we're struggling or what we're seeing. Let's attack the vulnerabilities and where we're feeling insecure, and then let's implement them, right? Because it doesn't matter what we talk about if we don't actually go apply it. That's a huge thing that's lost now. It's like, we'll tell, I imagine most coaching, how I used to do was go tell someone to do something and just hope it gets done. You have to apply the feedback in order to grow. So I tell them, don't worry about the meetings. Don't worry about the numbers. Your quota is this, but fuck it. It doesn't matter to me. Okay. What matters to me is that you're getting better at the behaviors. You're getting into a flow in your day. Flow in your day is kind of a thing that is like an intangible thing that you can't really define, but it's something that I really look at, especially early on, is that are we really struggling to get through the day, or is the day going fast for us? Because we all know time is an illusion, right? Like this is the theory of relativity. Like Albert Einstein, how he found out was that like when you're with a pretty girl, time flies by in a second. An hour feels like this, but then, when you're waiting on a train to come and you're standing there, like time feels like it's forever. So like when your day is going fast, that's a great sign that like you're really in it. And then you get into more flow state and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So now talking about that some more, like what, like, let's say you were given a new team, and what are some core values? And the reason I just want to throw this question at you is, for like people that are maybe entrepreneurs that are just starting, and, maybe they just hired their first like couple subcontractors, or maybe they got their first couple employees, and like building a good cohesive unit within their team. What are some core values that you build and like culture that you build within your team?
First thing is like being proactive, right? Like I tell them straight up, the only time I'm going to get mad at you in month 1, month 2, and month 3 is if you have a question, you don't ask me. That I don't like, I don't tolerate, I don't respect that at all. Like if you have a question, you never got taught this stuff, ask it. We're here to learn. We all need to be vulnerable in that respect and come to the middle and say like, let's get better here. Because if you have everyone just saying, yo, let's get better. How do I get better? You did that great. Let me do that better. Like we're all going to be in such a really good place. The egos are kind of put to the side, and in a job like sales, egos come into play, right? Your numbers are out there. They're posted as, you're her, he, there, that, like promotion, like it's all over the place. So, that's really the first thing is being proactive with what's going on, asking questions.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And let's say for, like motivation, and keep getting like I know like you sort of see that, they have to bring a certain level of motivation, but how do you approach a motivation? Do you approach motivation with your team, like getting people motivated, or is that sort of you like you're here to like, this is the job, like you expect like them to meet you halfway, and motivation and dedication sort of on their part, or like how do you sort of approach that? I'm interested to hear.
Yeah, motivation's a funny thing, right? Like first of all, I'm definitely Mr. Motive. Like my first 2-3 years in management or whatever, I played motivational videos like every morning. They helped for sure. But I found as I've grown in the role and got a little bit older that motivation is so fleeting too. It's so short. Like I could go watch a video right now. I'll get motivated for what, 8 minutes, and then I'm back to my regular thought process. So I tend to look for inspiration more than motivation. Like what are really what are the bigger things? It all comes down to what they want to do and who they want to be. And if they don't have those bigger things, right? If it's just about the next dollar, then it's difficult to inspire them. That's why I don't look for those types of people, right? Because when your goal is to become a better person, your goal is to make your family proud, like those things don't have a finish line. You understand? Mm-hmm. So like you're going to continuously strive to get that. You're going to continuously get that because in sales, there's always another mark. There's always another mark. So motivation, inspiration. Yeah, I use it all. It's very important. It's more, to me, it's about just keeping them centered and keeping them intentional with what they're trying to do to achieve their bigger picture.
Okay. And one post I actually saw that I really liked about you was building a cohesive team that, within the reps, there's competition, but also there's camaraderie, like, they'll help each other and stuff, but there's also that competition aspect. So, sometimes it might be, what maybe lopsided with what's happening, right? Like it's too competitive. Maybe there's not enough, people aren't competitive enough and it's too much camaraderie and stuff. But like, how do you sort of build that balance?
It's very difficult. And it's like, it's one of the hardest things to achieve. And I think that why I left that post is because it's a major sign of a good sales culture is when you have Jim and Jane battling it out. Like they really want to beat each other. But at the same time, Jim's going to get off the phone for a moment to help Jane with something. And it's literally beautiful. And it comes from a connection of the role. And both people understand how hard it is. And there's a mutual respect. And when both people are working really hard at something, they look at each other and they're in the same boat and they want to be the best they could be, but it doesn't stop them from helping, which is the ultimate goal. What we're trying to do to the prospects too is help, right? So there's not an individual thing. It takes time. There has to be a lot of integrity involved, right? Like things are done the right way. Because if there's two reps and someone feels like this other rep has a better chance, that kills culture. So creating a space where people have an even playing field and they know what they have to do. They have the tools to do it, and then letting them do it, and making sure that we're communicating offline a little bit with each other. We're building relationships with each other, and we're going after it. And my success, Jim's success doesn't affect Jane's. Just doesn't. We could both win. We could both get promoted. And in good orgs and good companies, it's easier to do that.
Yeah, 100%. And integrity is huge, right? Like that's such a huge component. Making sure like the playing field is even, right? Otherwise, people are gonna, they're gonna feel like if somebody else is cheating, or if that's allowed to happen when somebody starts cheating or using maybe ways that aren't, that sort of like a little bit of the gray area type stuff, right?
Yeah,
like
it kills it, crushes.
Yeah.
And then people don't want to work hard, then they blame fingers, and then it's just like, it's hard to get out of that. So it's so important that you set things up correctly.
Yeah, 100%. So now sort of going to the sort of in another direction, going into like let's say giving advice on to like when some like one of your reps is having a day off or something like that, or they're not hitting their targets. How do you approach those situations? I actually saw a post you did on how you approach those situations, but I would love for you to elaborate on that and just give a little bit more context.
I don't recall which post, but I could talk on it for sure. I mean, if someone's having an off day, shit, it's an off day. Who cares, right? Let's just not have two in a row. Like that's kind of my motto. Like, let's just not have two in a row. Sometimes things happen, right? Like we wake up and we don't always have 100%, right? We may have 70%, but can we give 100% of that 70%? Like that is the crucial thing. And if we could accept that, then having an off day, it doesn't matter to me, right? Having an off week, having an off month, and some patterns there, then it's like, all right, well, we got to address what's going on, right? But having an off day, having an off couple of hours, or just not feeling it for the day, don't care.
Okay. Yeah, and let's say it does expand into that sort of situation where it's like, because I think one of the biggest things is like for some people might find it easier, other people might find it harder, is like getting to that position where you need to have sort of that conversation with somebody being like, hey, you're not performing well, like that's a really tough conversation to have, right? And how do you have that conversation that, you know, it doesn't breed like resentment or animosity amongst, you know, the management team and the rep, or, you know, like that type of stuff? Like, so how do you approach those types of conversations? Like, and the reason I sort of want to pitch this question to you is sort of because you know, I think it's another great piece of advice that, you know, new entrepreneurs are having to deal with, right? Like, you know, when they first bring people onto their team, you know, sometimes the people that they bring on that they thought were going to be great sometimes don't turn out to be as good as they thought, and they need to make that decision of saying, hey, I need to either let this person go, or, you know, I need to, you know, step in and, you know, maybe try and coach them and try and figure out what's happening to sort of like, you know, what's the problem, and, you know, that they can solve it for them, right?
Yeah. The first thing is that there's, you know, my team and anyone who I've ever had those conversations with, there's no surprises, right? There's no surprises, and that's on them and that's on me, right? Like, it's not all of a sudden they are going to wake up one day and be like, oh shit, Jesse just hit me that I'm not doing well, and that my months or my last couple of months are not good. Like, they know these things, and we have deliberate things that we're working on, you know. And there comes to a certain point, and my boss, KD, was the one who really instilled this into me, amongst many other things early on, was that it's a disservice if you have someone working really, really hard at the role and they're not getting the results, and we're coaching and they're doing the things like, and they're working really hard. It's actually a disservice for us to let them keep working like that, right? They should be able to go work and put that effort somewhere else where they could be reciprocated and see the results and have somewhere fun. It could be miserable if you just don't ever see anything come of it. You know what I mean? So the first thing is there's no surprises. The second thing is just being completely open and honest with this. Everyone knows this is a results business, right? Are we showing improvement? Are there signs? Are there things that we are working on or not working on, right? And the first thing that when someone comes to me that's in a slump is, my question is always the same. Like, look yourself in the mirror and ask yourself if you've done absolutely everything in your power to get the job done. The answer is always no. So then it's really like, all right, let's go back to the basics. Let's come up with a plan. Let's execute on that plan. Let's see where we could get better. And if it doesn't work, fuck it. It doesn't work, I'll get your job somewhere else. You know what I mean? But I don't have a problem with those conversations because I create such a trust and bond with my people and my team that they know that I have their best interests at heart. And, you know, it goes the other way too. I'll have people struggling and I'll say, they don't want to be in sales and they don't want, I'm not ready to, I got to be honest. I'm not ready to tell you that this is not for you. I don't think that you've given yourself a fair shot. And those conversations happen as well.
Yeah. No. That's like, yeah, like I can already tell, like to work on your team must be really fun. Cause it's like, everything's in the open there. Like, and everybody understands each other so well. And the communication is so good in your team environment and stuff, that, you know, everybody understands what's happening. There's no like blindside stuff. There's no like anxiety and stuff that's happening. Cause like, you know, you're able to have that open conversation. Whereas like, I know with some businesses, it's like the reps don't want to talk to the manager because they feel like they're scared to do it, right? To have that conversation. Right. So yeah,
it's terrible.
So
yeah. And it's like, you know, people think that they're just going to get fired, and I'm sure it happens in many places. It's a shame. And I hate hearing about it, but like, I've never had to fire someone and they were shocked ever in my entire life. Where I said, oh shit, like there's a process for this. They know what's coming, when it's coming and why. And that's on the manager to really communicate that step by step on where we are, what we need to see, because eventually we got to have a return on investment as a business, right? Like, most of these things are looked at in an Excel sheet when you get up that high. Like, you know, it's up to us as people managers to treat them like people.
Yeah, 100%. And I absolutely love that. What you said there is to treat people like people and not like, you know, the higher level like numbers and stuff, which yeah,
it's true.
So yeah, so moving on from that, are you still good for time? Because I know we're at the 45-minute mark. Or are you good for another 15 minutes?
Yeah.
I just got a couple more questions.
Sure.
So yes, so I sort of want to talk about now is your sort of LinkedIn game, and you know how you're growing, and what advice do you have for people that want to grow on LinkedIn?
Yeah, I think my advice everyone knows, right? And it's just post. You know what I mean? Like I I literally have no strategy at all with LinkedIn, and I have ideas of what I want to do when I do take it serious. And people like we spoke offline about like Justin Welsh, and I've sat on his things. Like he's amazing what he's done, and there are specific ways to build your brand online, but you cannot build your brand online if you do not post. That is the one constant thing. So people out there who want to do that, look, people don't want to create because they don't want to be judged. That's just a natural human behavior, right? We don't want to put something out there because once we put it out there, now people could see it and they could judge it. And it takes guts, it takes courage to do that. And, even myself, like, you'll put out a post that doesn't get a lot of likes and it's like, you don't feel great about that, or it doesn't get a lot of, it doesn't get a lot of response. But even a couple people, and that's kind of my mentality, is like, I'll post things from SDR management stuff mostly, and even stuff just around life. Like that's just what I'm doing. And maybe I eventually, when I get serious, I got to get a little bit more of a niche, right? That's really how you do it. But for me right now, I really don't care. I just post what's on my mind. I don't even write my stuff. I just do it right in the spot, in the moment, when in the morning I do it, and just put it out there. But it's like, if I could help just one person out there, literally, if I could change someone's day, or I could give someone a tip that they're better at their job, then I actually take it as a responsibility that I should do that.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's like, if I could help. So that's the way I look at it. A good tip when writing also is to just pretend like you're writing to one person. When you start to think about writing to a huge crowd of people, you really get messed up. Like even, Warren Buffett, I read, like, used to do this when he was writing to his investors. He would, Dear Sarah, like his sister, I don't know if that's her name, but he would write to her, and at the end he would erase it. So that's just a quick tip.
Yeah, no, that's actually an amazing tip. I've watched, because I'm wanting to build my LinkedIn brand more, right? And I've watched quite a few videos, and I haven't heard that, write to one person, because that is true. Like when you first start putting content out, it's like super overwhelming, right? Like you might write something, you might rewrite it like 8, 9, 10 times, right? Because you're like, oh no, this doesn't sound right. People are going to understand it. Like, are people going to like it? Like, am I getting the point across? Like all this other stuff, right? But I mean, like you said, like like really the only way to get better at it is just by doing it, right? So yeah.
Yeah, do it, and then just like continuously, look at what's working and what's not. But if you're really serious about it, go take a course and get specific on a niche that you want to talk about and build your tribe out. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And now my last two questions here. One is, what is, I like to play a little, what's overrated about sales and what's underrated about sales?
I like that. I like that. Overrated about sales is for sure that there's like this, like all these formulas and things of how to do stuff, right? Like the perfect way to handle this objection, or this is how you have to say this. Completely overrated. Literally, you were talking to a human being. And the thing about it is that we try so much to be something we're not, that's what we sound like. And people are not receptive to that. That's why people don't like fake people. At least I don't like fake people. You know what I mean? Like people are attracted to the realness. So the same thing happens on sales calls. Like, just try to help them. Just try to help them. You have a script and you got to practice that for sure. And you got to use that, right? But the money is made in the pivot, and the pivot is owned when you're able to really understand what you're trying to do. So I think that's completely overrated. Like trying to figure out this perfect, like everything's put in a bubble and got to say things a certain way. Underrated. Underrated, I would say, is the career that can be made in sales, even till today, where you have, like, I think sales is, I don't know, it's been growing like crazy ever since I got into it, and it's more mainstream and well known. There's college classes now for it, but man, you really don't need a college education to get in here and make 100 grand in 18 months. Like that is, what other job can you talk about like that? What
Yeah.
other job can you talk about like that? It's crazy the opportunities that you can do by just doing what your manager says. So like SDRs out there, just do what your manager says. Just do what they say. Literally
Yeah.
do it. Have a smile on your face and leave the job when the job is over and come back and do it again. Like, it's an amazing opportunity to really put yourself in a position for a career.
Yeah, no, I think that's huge what you mentioned there, and I think a lot of people don't, like I'm only 21, right? So
Oh,
I think
wow.
about like high school and like going to college and stuff like that, and I think like sales is never really seen as um like a career path, right? Like everybody's thinking like, oh, I'll get into like maybe like I don't know something more specific in the company, but sales is never really seen as like when you're going through high school, you're like, oh, I want to do sales or something like that. Or when you get into college, you never really think about doing sales and like what is sales? Like what am I trying to do? Right. Am I trying and I think there's also like a bad stigma, which I think is changing because
Yes.
and stuff, which I really, really like. Because sales, like when you're saying like, oh, I want to go get a sales job, everybody just thinks of like the used car salesman with like
Yeah.
slicked back hair and suit and just trying to just push the like shitty products or like Wolf of Wall Street type of stuff where it's like just trying to screw people over. So a lot of people like there's like this negative connotation, but I really like that it's changing into like no, it's like salespeople are actually doing an amazing job of like helping people solve problems within their company with a service or with a product, right?
Yeah. No, me too. I completely agree with that.
Mm-hmm. And sort of moving on to the last question here is I took this from another podcast that I saw. I can't remember the name of it, but I should probably look at give credit to them because it's a really good question. It's what is one question you wish people asked you more?
That question. This is probably true, but let me think about that for a moment more.
Doesn't have to be about business. It can be anything in life,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah, I would say um, probably like what I wish someone asked me more. Um, why I like to help people, maybe.
Mhm. So why do you like to help people?
Let me think about this now for a second. Hold on, I don't know.
Yeah, to be honest, that is a very deep question, right? Because it's like hard to understand like um why like I think there's some people, well I think in general a lot of people are sort of I don't know. It is a hard question to be honest. It's like, are people born with that, or is it developed to like, like really enjoying? Because I know some people that just really don't like dealing with other people. Like they just like to just more introverted, I would say. Like they just don't really like dealing with people. They prefer to be like in their own, doing their own thing, like or whatever, right? And then
Mhm.
there's other people that like they love to be like extroverted, right? They just love to be around people, helping people, and it just gives them a huge amounts of energy and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah. Why I like to help people. I've always asked or I like to think, anyone who knows me and even my team, like they'll laugh at me because I always bring up big questions, right? Like, what is this? And I used to ask myself all the time growing up, like, what does this all mean? Like, literally, what do we do, like, as a species, and like that type of shit. And I would have these conversations with my dad a lot. And then there was one day where it kind of just occurred to me. I was like, I figured it all out. It's all about picking up someone else. Like someone else. If you could pick someone else up, if every person in the world did that, if every person in the world picked, I get the chills thinking about it, talking about it. Every person had that same intent. I'm going to go help someone else. Everyone would win. Everyone would be, feeling good, right? But that's not how human beings are, right? We have egos. We want things that don't necessarily matter,
Mhm.
and we'll do terrible things to make that
Yeah.
happen. So I think that's my answer.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I absolutely agree with that. Like if we were like able to reduce some of like the self interest and self like, care, like no, it's good to care about yourself, but to like remove like, that sort of like DNA level of like survival type mentality of like, you know, myself over everybody else. And that was exchanged with, you know, just helping everybody. Cause like if everybody cared about everybody the same way they cared about themselves, I think this world would be a one hell of a place because it would be so good, right?
Right, but I want to correct one thing there, because
Mhm.
taking care of yourself is more is you know, you got to be in a good place in order to help someone
Yeah.
else, right? Like
Mhm.
that's putting yourself first
Mhm.
is important. Like I want to normalize that. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, because you're not going to be able. I can't help my family or my team if I don't get good sleep,
Mhm.
like in a micro version of it, right? Like, so you got to take care of yourself first. You got to really care about yourself, but
Mhm.
you know, for the right reasons, right? Like
Yeah.
we everyone has so much of many things, and we think that like we want more of these things, but we're miserable as it is, and we think that if we get more of them, we're going to be happy, and more from you, more from you, more from you. When in reality, it's like everyone just thought about someone else a little bit more.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I absolutely love that. And I think that's a great place to end the podcast. Yeah. So thank you for coming on, Jesse. It's been absolutely amazing hearing your story and the advice that you gave. So where can people find out more about you? You know, if they want to connect with you on LinkedIn, or if you have any projects going on, or your company, or what anything else, right?
Yeah, for sure, man. You know, just on LinkedIn, you know, I'm there, I'm available. Hit me, like, you know, for advice or anything like that. I'm open to help. You know, I post pretty regularly, but that's probably the best place to get in touch with me for sure.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you again for coming on the show, man. And thank you to the listeners that made it all the way to the end. I really appreciate that. I highly recommend that you go check out Jesse on LinkedIn. If you're in the sales, if you're in a sales role, I highly recommend that you do that. But yeah, thank you. And yeah, until next time.